Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take out stories I've narrated and I've written to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Patronage, written by Scientific Theory. The bar was loud, but not crowded, dingy, but not dirty. The muttering and raucous laughter of a dozen species drifted through the atmosphere, and just as many harsh conflicting scents from what passed for drinks. I risked glancing up again and jumped, knocking over a glass when I realized it was staring at me. I froze under those hardened eyes, panicking, while some oddly rational parts of my mind notified me that whatever was on that glass was spitting and hissing its way across the table. After what felt like an eternity, he broke the spell and waved me over with a small gesture. Cleaning rag forgotten, I walked over in a trance and stood in front of him. He was the first human I'd ever seen, and he was huge, like something out of a Hollywood. Scars started across his face, and the deep grey of his armor was mottled with burns, dents, and gouges. On anything else, it would have looked as though they were piloting a small mech, but somehow the proportions fit him. A giant in flesh. Looking down, I realized his helmet sat on the table, and in front illuminated with a skull being consumed by black fire. "Sit down, kid. I don't bite." His voice was rough, somewhere between a growl and a deep baritone. As I sat, it was precisely that moment that I realized how terrified I was. For a moment, we just stared across the table at one another. I hazarded a prayer to the mother on the off chance that I might be finding out the truth on this business firsthand. He cleared his throat and broke the silence. "I'm guessing you haven't seen much of us, then." This time his voice rolled out smooth and pleasant, closer to an elder's than a personification of death sitting before me. As the thought streaked through my mind, I realized that there was a hint of a smile on his face, and the sharpness had bled out to his eyes. It felt jarring, like the world had just tilted. You don't look all that bad now." My mouth snapped shut a moment after realizing what had just spilled out of my mouth. For the second time in as many minutes, I threw a Hail Mary, this time to the World Spirit, just in case she would be kind enough to fold him into their afterlife instead. Confusion plain in his face. He leaned back for a moment before showing nearly as many teeth as the skull in his helmet. "Shit!" And laughing. It was explosive, gut-wrenching laughs that tore through the room like a freight hauler. Everyone who had been studiously acting like there was a blank space in the middle of the tables turned to openly stare, and my manager looked on with an alarm when he realized I was sitting with a lone human. The outburst finally slowed to a chuckle. 5 months of Xeno's cowering, and here you are trying to pick me up." My frills went wide in alarm. "I'm sorry, damn it, what was the word? Sir, but I think I would be hard-pressed to lift even a portion of your armor." He laughed again, but a little more subdued. I know. His voice was warm and cheerful, dark eyes twinkling. "Our reputation has gotten to be a little heavy, so I try to find humor in the little things. That, and you echoed my wife's reaction word for word when we went out on our first date." He paused and looked around, everyone immediately tearing their gaze away. "I also forgot how quiet you guys are, so pardon my outburst." Again, I felt a bit jarring. The terrifying creature in well-worn combat gear, grinning like my grandfather would on holidays. No, not a problem. I just, it's all very surprising. We've, heard so many stories about how, He quirked an eyebrow at me, still smiling when I stuttered. I gulped. I actually audibly gulped. The grin left his face. "How destructive we can be." "How forceful, like unstoppable forceful humans can be," I trailed off, almost pleading. Looking up, I felt a flicker of fear before a somber expression took hold on his face. "Yeah, I guess we've earned that." He tapped his finger against the table, contemplative despite the weight of each impact. "Still, though, we've had to put a lot of work into not being the bad guys. You think we'd be a little more approachable?" His dark brown eyes stared unfocused into the distance, before turning back to me. "Tell you what, it looked like you had a healthy amount of curiosity, so how about we do a little exchange?" The intensity of his gaze threw me off for a moment. "I don't really have much to give. I just clean tables here." He barked out a laugh and slapped the table. "I'm not asking for much, just a few answers to some questions of mine, and I'll provide the same." The excitement of being able to freely question a human warred with the realization that his brief motion had left an imprint of a large gauntleted hand deep within the table. Following my gaze, he noticed the imprint. Oops. A blue glow lit from the palm, and an odd series of ripples completely washed the imprint away before continuing up his arm. I felt a twinge of hunger, despite having just gotten off my meal break. I sputtered, "What?" He grinned, "Nanobotic resonance manipulation. First question, what is your name?" I was reading, Todd, I'm Todd. What's your... "Marcus, nice to meet you. And second question, really? We're light years from humanity. And your name is really Todd?" "Yes, my parents are part of a human cult." Realizing I just yet to close my mouth, I snapped it shut. Marcus, nodded that. What did you like to do?" Dumb. He laughed again. At least I was entertaining the giant friendly death machine. "Surfing, space driving, drinking, crushing needs, addiction cults. Why were you staring earlier?" I felt the world was spinning underneath me, and every time I thought I had a grasp on things, something new would knock me off balance. "Crushing needs, Marcus playfully smacked the table. "Hey, answer first, then question." I stared for a moment, realizing that the entire bar behind him was openly listening in on everything. Then a quick glance confirmed that my boss was thoroughly polishing the table I had spilled on just moments ago. Marcus leaned forward, armor sliding smoothly despite the clear abuse that it suffered. "Right." I took a breath. "I was curious as to what a fully armored human was doing here. What do you mean, crushing needs addiction cults?" "Yo, now you're getting it," he smiled. "Now, I mean that I like crushing an addiction cult set up by need, capitalized. Weren't you afraid of the fully armored human?" My mouth started moving, seemingly without my input. "To be honest, I was terrified. But it didn't make sense that you would spend an hour drinking before killing us. Who is need capitalized?" Marcus frowned. It's just need. Their name is just capitalized. And Need is the deity of the now-defunct Soltok malediction. Would you have been afraid of an unarmored human?" "Yes." It was weird. I felt detached, almost like I was floating, but confident. I hardly wondered if the outward drinks were really as good as the others made them out to be. "Humans are terrifying. I thought that Soltok malediction already had a god." Marcus frowned hard enough to inject some concern. "Sorry, I mean, you seem nice and all, but..." He just laughed. Really, a reoccurring theme now. "No, I was frowning because that's not a question. Try again." I smacked my head. Didn't the Soltok malediction already have a god?" He smiled. "Phew, they did. It was called the Screaming Hunger, then, and was worshipped as the god of cannibalism. We put a stop to that, and now it's scraping up whatever energy it can get off the hunger of addiction. Why do you think humans are terrifying?" "That's a bit heavy," he cocked his head. "The question," I clarified. "I mean, I guess the god thing too. Well, I guess." Not every day you find yourself explaining the terror of humanity to a human." "You're huge." Marcus raised his eyebrows and gestured to himself. "No, yes, all of you, though, in everything. When you look at the greatest singers, they aren't all humans, they're mostly DARs. But there's a few. The best architects are mostly toons, but there are several humans whose structures rated traveling the galaxy to see. It's the same with scientists and artists and engineers. It's everywhere." I looked up to make sure Marcus was still paying attention. "So imagine when a group that's pretty much good at everything turns its hand to war. We all expected you to be second best again, to be bloodied by the 7,000 blades, and you aren't. You take down a god of war and the internal campaign, and then, I glanced at his helmet. "And then our patron came out," Marcus finished for me. "Yeah," I shot back a little lamely. "Since then, with the gods all in a tizzy, the media blackouts and the lack of information, it's hard to not be afraid of a species that worships death and has killed a god, right?" For a moment, my eyes landed on the thing smoking in the corner booth. I'd never been a smoker, but there had been a reason why so many creatures did it. My attention snapped back as Marcus's eyes hardened, and he downed a swig of a drink strong enough to be flammable. "To answer your question, not right. We were bloodied by the blaze. We don't worship death, and we've killed 3, soon to be 4 gods. Next question. Why is that a young Zito cleaning tables has been the only one willing to fill me in on this?" I gulped. This was edging into heretical territory. "Well, when you first showed up, everyone thought that you were just godless. I mean, you had religions, but you didn't have a god, and it wouldn't be the first time another species lured away someone's god through better worship. Everyone just assumed that you were really good at everything. It was hopeful, you know. It was all, even the godless can achieve great things if they work hard. Imagine what the godly can do with sufficient grace and benedictions. And you guys just kept on doing great things. More than you should have. The bar was silent. I knew it was unwise to imply humans could outshine the gifts of the gods, but rock and a hard place. The priests were displeased. The gods were... I couldn't think of a way to finish that, though I wasn't asking to be smited, so I just moved on. Then the end of the war and a cosmic constant appears to take the soul of a god, claims that you are her children. Everyone's been terrified that her gift was the ability to consume souls for power. Alongside less believable but more terrifying ideas, I forced myself to meet Marcus's eyes and realized that I was panting. Geez, don't strike me down. I just really need to drink and smoke and eat, I offered in silent prayer. It took me a moment for silence to sink in. So what did she give you? The question everyone wanted to know, but no one wanted to ask. Marcus frowned. This is going to be the last answer, not because I don't like you, but because of a change in plans. The short answer, death didn't give us anything. I saw expressions of confusion spill around the bar. I snuck another glance at the smoker and wondered if I could take some. Death isn't like your patrons. She didn't hand out lavish gifts and power to secure her own worship. She took. How ancient cities took thousands of years longer to form because everything we tried ended in death. When we were in tribes, she took the slowest, the weakest, the strongest who went out on hunts. When we gathered in villages, she sent raiders and took the peaceful. When the raiders slept, she sent more to take the inattentive. When we built castles and great walls to protect us from each other, plague stalked through our walls, closed by siege, and took more. When we unified into great empires, she took us by the tens of thousands, as the weak and primitive ground against organized and advanced, until they too were worn down. When we unified into nations and spread democracy, she sent nationalism and fascism to ignite a machine of war that nearly consumed the world. He paused to take a breath. Death was the mother we never wanted. She took the weak, she took the strong, she took the deserving. His voice cracked as he spat out the next line. And she took the innocent. In the end, she only left those who survived, by any means necessary. He slammed the rest of his drink before picking up his helmet and slotting it into place. Which is why, if there's one thing that can be said about us, is that we never know when to give up. The skull grinned at us, and his voice rang in an otherworldly echo. I noticed a high-pitched tone screeching just at the edge of being understandable, and my mind abruptly jumped back to when I had my first glass of instant liqueur. I realized I had never craved anything so badly as I wanted that glass. Shakily, I started to stand before the skull before me. Marcus gently pushed me back down. The ringing grew into a howling scream. Through the hunger, I felt a needle prick and wondered, hoping, desperate, that it was narcotics. Everything started to fade, and from a great distance I heard the skull mutter, That said, I'm awfully glad to have you on my side. A soft voice whispered across the room, cutting through the rising scream. Sweat and lilting and harsh and cruel at once, near and far. It spoke with a bittersweet promise of ending things too soon and moments untreasured. Do you forgive me, then? If there was a response, I lost it to the bone-shattering need screaming through my soul, drifting though I was, and gave in to the sweet siren call of unconsciousness. Sometime later, I woke up to the sound of animals croaking and the light shining on my face. Sitting up, I pushed debris off my chest and realized that I was sitting in the bar. No, that I was sitting in what was left of the bar. Looking around, I realized everyone was neatly lined up along where the far wall would have been, and after one panicked moment, still breathing. In fact, the entire place had been completely demolished, all except for a single table, incongruous in its normalcy. Climbing to my feet with a groan, glass, then wood, clattered to the ground, and I staggered over to the table and found a note pinned next to the tablet. Apologies for the mess. Need was supposed to cower in the den until I arrived, but the threat of impending death seemed to make him reckless. However, I appreciated our conversation, and you provided some much-needed awareness that has been all but impossible to achieve before now. I understand that this was likely a stressful event for you, and as such, I had left a sum of money that should be more than enough to buy your own bar. Don't worry about your boss. I took care of the repairs for him as well. If you want to retire and lead a lavish lifestyle, I don't blame you. Take the tablet and go. On the other hand, though, if you're still curious about humanity, open up the tablet and hit the beacon. I could use someone who could talk to the locals. Marcus. Todd looked around, not at the bar, but at the desolate surroundings, scrublands extending as far as the eye could see, a dead town that fit him just as badly as his name. Feeling an odd bolt of heat flash up his body, his heart galloped at the idea of leaping into the unknown. For a brief moment, terror grabbed him and shook him by the bones. Yet, with all the inner turmoil, a quiet grin worked its way onto his face. He hit the beacon. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.